There is a version of you that existed before other people had opinions about it. Most people cannot remember who that was. What I want to talk about is not your past. It is the distance between who you were before you understood what other people needed you to be, and who you have become since. That distance is not dramatic. It did not happen in a single moment. It happened in the accumulation of very small decisions, each one reasonable, each one understandable, each one costing something you did not notice at the time, because the cost was paid in installments so small they did not register as loss. But the distance is real, and most people carry it as a vague sense of wrongness they cannot quite name. An exhaustion that does not come from overwork, a restlessness that does not come from boredom, a feeling that the person they are presenting to the world is slightly off, like a note played in a key that does not quite fit the song. This video is about how that happens, not as a failure, not as weakness, but as a structural process that is so universal and so gradual that by the time most people notice it, they have been living inside the result for years. And the most important thing I will tell you is this: recognizing it is not comfortable, but it is the only thing that makes any of what comes next possible. The process begins with a simple and universal experience. You express something true about yourself, and the room responds poorly. It does not have to be dramatic. A preference that gets dismissed, an opinion that gets mocked, an emotion that makes someone uncomfortable, a piece of your genuine character that gets met with silence or disapproval, or the specific kind of mild social rejection that does not announce itself as rejection. It just makes you feel, afterward, like you should have said something different. The brain registers this immediately, not as a lesson about the room, as a lesson about you. And the lesson is that part of you costs something. It creates friction. It makes people uncomfortable. It produces outcomes that are worse than the alternative, which is to not show it. So the brain begins an optimization process. Very quietly, very efficiently, it begins to surface the parts of you that produce better outcomes, approval, warmth, inclusion, and suppress the parts that produce worse ones, not through conscious decision, through reinforcement. Every time the adjusted version of you gets a better response, the adjustment becomes more automatic. Every time the genuine version gets a worse one, it becomes less available. This is not a conscious performance. That is the critical distinction. You are not deciding to be different. You are being shaped by feedback that you are not even aware you are receiving. The optimization happens below the level of thought. And over time, over years, the version of you that survives this process is not the one that was most true. It is the one that was most socially viable. Here is what makes this difficult to address once it has happened. The brain does not experience the optimized version of you as a compromise. It experiences it as you. The constructed identity, the one built from social feedback over years, is defended by the brain with the same intensity as any other core belief. It feels like the truth. It feels like who you are. This is not self-deception in any simple sense. The brain is doing exactly what it is designed to do: protect the model of self that has produced the most stable outcomes. Questioning that model is not experienced as growth. It is experienced as threat. This is why people who attempt to reclaim something more authentic often find that it does not feel like freedom. It feels like danger, like going back to a version of themselves that got hurt. The brain treats authenticity as a risk, not a resource, because for most people, at some point, it was. The compressed identity, the optimized version, is quieter. It generates less friction. It fits better into the spaces that other people have prepared for it. And the brain which is fundamentally a prediction machine, finds this predictability deeply comfortable. What the brain cannot tell you, what you have to figure out yourself, is the cost of that comfort, which is not paid in safety. It is paid in vitality, in the specific energy that comes from being uncompromisingly yourself in a room, which most people have not felt in so long that they have stopped noticing its absence. I want to tell you something about the moment the compression becomes permanent, or close to it. There is a point in this process where the constructed identity stops being something you do and becomes something you are, where the gap between the performed version and the original version closes, not because you became more authentic, but because the original version became less accessible. Most people cannot identify when this happened. The transition is too gradual, but there are behavioral signatures of someone who has crossed it, and the most reliable one is this: they have become fluent in their own performance. They no longer feel the effort of the adjustment. The optimized version of themselves comes easily, naturally, without the slight friction that signals a gap between expression and truth. They have stopped noticing the distance because the distance has been normalized, and this is where the compressed identity becomes genuinely dangerous, not because it is dishonest, but because it is comfortable. The person inside it has no daily reminder that something is missing, because the absence has been absorbed into the background of ordinary life. The exhaustion that remains, the restlessness, the sense of wrongness is no longer connected to its source in their mind. It floats, unanchored, and attaches itself to surface explanations. The wrong job, the wrong city, the wrong relationship, the wrong decade, anything except the correct one. That the version of themselves they are living inside was built for other people's comfort, not their own. There are 3 behavioral patterns that reliably appear in someone who is living inside a significantly compressed identity. The first is chronic over-explanation. People who have suppressed significant parts of their genuine character tend to over-justify what remains. They explain their preferences before they are questioned. They preemptively defend choices that no one has challenged. They fill silences with rationale that was not requested. This is the behavioral residue of years of adjustment. The brain has learned to preempt the disapproval it once received by providing the disapproval's rebuttal before it arrives. The second is difficulty with genuine preference. Ask someone with a highly compressed identity what they actually want, not what they think they should want, not what would be easiest, but what they genuinely prefer, and watch what happens. There is often a pause that is longer than the question warrants, a scanning behavior, as if checking the external environment before generating the answer. Because for many people, genuine preference has been so consistently filtered through social acceptability that accessing it directly has become genuinely difficult. The preference exists, but the pathway to it has become overgrown from disuse. The third is a specific relationship with being alone. People who are significantly compressed often find time alone either deeply relieving, a space where the performance can temporarily stop, or deeply uncomfortable, because without an audience to perform for, they are uncertain who they are. Both responses point to the same underlying structure, an identity that is organized around external feedback rather than internal experience. If any of these 3 patterns describes you, not as a judgment, but as information, then what you are experiencing is not a character flaw. It is the logical outcome of a process that was entirely rational at the time it began. I want to be careful about how I end this. There is a version of this conversation that ends with a prescription, with a framework for reclaiming who you were before the compression, with steps. I am not going to give you that. Not because it does not exist, but because the most important thing this video can do is not tell you what to do. It is to accurately name what happened. What happened is this. You learned, through repeated experience, that certain parts of you were costly, and you made, without making a decision, the rational adjustment. You optimized for the environment you were in. You survived it by being slightly less yourself than you started. That is not failure. That is what humans do. What it costs you, what it has always cost you, is not safety. You have safety. It costs you the specific experience of being recognized, not liked, not approved of, recognized. The thing that happens when someone encounters the unfiltered version of you and responds to it as real. Most people have had this experience at some point. It is unmistakable. It does not feel like social success. It feels like relief. The question this video is asking, the only one that matters, is how long it has been since you felt it, and whether the distance between then and now is something you are willing to measure.